What's going on? My name is Joe Lewis and I practice talking on the internet. I haven't made a video in about 2 weeks and I've been busy with a lot of stuff online and offline. A new game came out, so I've been kind of grinding on that. Been dealing with just like offline stuff. So I apologize. I mentioned that I was going to keep a more consistent upload pattern, but things have kind of been agitated in such a way. But I do appreciate the support, whether that be those who are supporting through the GoFundMe, those who are supporting on Patreon, those who are supporting on the Twitch channel. It's been very, very helpful. And it's been nice to hear the kind words from some of you. I want to talk a little bit about my stance on relationships because I'm noticing that people are being a bit more open about how they feel about relationships and partnerships and stuff like that. And I'm throwing my hat in the ring. I do think it's something that's important, right? I think we need to have a bit more honest conversation about how we feel about relationships, because there is some truth in the fact that in the internet sphere of content, the one way that we could probably fight for our voices to be like in the algorithm is for us to actually be in the conversation a bit more overt way instead of sort of passively bringing it up in videos. So I'm going to kind of give my stance on marriage and how I feel about marriage and how that influences me and how I navigate relationships and stuff like that. I think and believe that marriage is a union. And since I believe that marriage is a union, I think that you need to co-determine each other's ends as a union. So there's a lot of like, every once in a not a lot of, but every once in a while people talk about the distribution of like a marriage is 50-50, a marriage is, and sometimes it's 60-40. There's an awful video about Michelle Obama, excuse me, saying that. I think that marriage is 100-100 at all times. And because it's 100-100, what I mean by that is you owe your knowledge, your experience, your creative energies, everything that makes you you to your partner. You owe that to them as a matter of duty. Because I think marriage has a very peculiar type of freedom and a freedom from dating. And I think that we need to take that freedom from dating seriously. And something that I mentioned in a couple of panels when I was still doing them was that I am kind of wary about divorce insofar as I think people need to explore divorce for substantive reasons. And I don't think a lot of people explore divorce for substantive reasons. The only time I think divorce is justifiable is if there's violence involved. And when people first heard that, I understand that there's like this desire to think that I meant violence as like overt, like harm towards another individual. But I believe violence to be in the simplest possible way that I can describe it, as if there are actions, behaviors, or conditions that take away your ability to externalize your freedom. And if your partner participates in those activities, then divorce is justifiable. So let's say you, like, for instance, I believe that people have the right to have their own personal finances and have their own personal things. So if your partner is moving in such a way where they are taking away your ability to have your personal finances and your personal things, then I think divorce is justifiable. If you don't feel like you're able to externalize your freedom by speaking your truth freely. So that could be something like, my partner politically is a Republican and I'm a Democrat. And every time I want to talk about politics, I need to dilute my language in a certain way so that my partner doesn't get agitated or upset. I think divorce in that situation is justifiable. Anything that prevents you from externalizing your freedom in the partnership, in the union, is a justification for divorce for me. I mentioned on panels that I described it as violence, and I understand that like that may have gotten sort of complicated, especially even after I explained it, because then you get to the weird, like, I think Steven Crowder was going through a divorce at the time that I mentioned like my divorce take, and people thought that like, oh, I'm totally fine with Steven Crowder not being divorced and having his partner, excuse me, stay. When in reality, I think when it comes to divorce, And friction in relationships, I think it's your duty to use your creative energies, your knowledge, your experience, all those things I described to figure it out. Um, because again, like if we're being 100 here and there is some type of complication in the relationship, I think that it is your duty to figure that out. And I think something that happens a lot of the time is that in the face of friction, some people just don't want to figure it out and use their creative energies to do so. This isn't completely like universally true, right? I don't believe that like in the face of friction, like the smallest bit of friction, women are just like marching over to the courthouse for a divorce. But I do think that the way that America kind of creates people, we don't really do a good job at exploring our energies to engage with friction and discourse. I think that America kind of defaults our being in a way where when there is friction, we kind of like revert back inward or we just try to avoid it altogether. Where I think that in a healthy relationship, in a healthy partnership, friction is engaged with. And it's not engaged with as a matter of you hating the person. It's that, hey, we are in this together and we got to figure it out together. So we have to use our 100% of ourselves to figure it out. And I think any examples that you can think of that are not the 100% expression of who you are is going to create some level of friction. Because I think marriage is freedom. I think marriage is freedom from dating. And anybody who's ever dated before understands that, hey, like, would it be cool if there was something that said, hey, you don't have to participate in this exercise anymore? And I think marriage is that thing. Marriage is that freedom. Because I don't think you're free when you're dating. And that's a whole other video that I'm thinking about making. I want to kind of keep this very short. But generally, to kind of like do a soft little bow on this, because it's gonna be a shorter video than usual, I think that marriage is a union that requires 100. There is no any type of distribution is not approaching marriage, I think, in a way that is legitimate, in my opinion. I think a legitimate marriage is two people externalizing their freedom as a union, which is different than externalizing your freedom as an individual, because there's two of you, and since there's two of you, the problems of the world are gonna present themselves a little bit differently than it was when it's just yourself. So a way that you can think about that, in my opinion, is that you are moving in a way where your partner sees themselves in your actions at all times. And that, I think, requires discipline, and discipline is a muscle. It's a muscle that requires constant care and constant what's the word? Constant reinforcement, maybe. That's the word I'm thinking of. And I think a lot of the times we don't really strengthen or practice or work on that discipline muscle within moving in a way where our partner sees ourselves in our actions. And that just creates atrophy and not fun. It's never fun. It's never fun when your partner says, I don't feel seen. And then since men are toxic pieces of shit, we'd be like, what do you mean? But again, like, I'm going to make a couple videos similar to this where like, there are parts in this that I know are kind of vague because usually I keep like a little nice script I keep in front of me and I try to keep myself focused. This one, not so much. So I'm going to, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to pick certain portions of this to elaborate a bit stronger on. That way it's a bit more clear. But generally speaking, like I said, I think marriage is an externalization of freedom between two people. And a way that a marriage is legitimate is that you are moving in a way where your partner sees themselves in your actions in all areas of activity. And that's the general gist of it. Hope you're doing well. There's been a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama on the internet. I moved myself away from Twitter, but every once in a while I peek back in to see what's going on. So there are some things that are kind of like on my list that I want to talk about and make videos about. But until then, if you haven't subscribed, please do. It'd be very, very helpful. I'm also on TikTok now with my old name, Joe Lewis, with an O instead of sorry, a zero instead of an O. So it's J0ELEWIS. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers on TikTok so that I can access to live streaming capabilities because I want to be free from Twitch. Because co-streaming and like dual streaming on TikTok is allowed. So I want to, you know, do the thing. All right, but either way, I hope you're doing well. I hope this video finds you in a good place, and I'll see you soon.